Servus from Vienna, Austria. In this show I have these topics for you. One quick minute about few reactions to the first edition. News from Microsoft concerning Access, above all the update bug stories. Community, current activities of some Access user groups and the next bigger event for Access developers, the Access-DevCon Vienna. And finally, an interview with Thomas Pfoch about his map tool, completely done within Access. Let's start with some viewer reactions. Ni hao! With this we have given our utmost. There was a comment on YouTube that Access News should not only feature Europe and the USA, but also other parts of the world.
This is great feedback!
Unfortunately, the Chinese do not respond to our requests. Another audience reaction was related to our careless dress. We quote, "The presenter can be dressed for the occasion."
There may be stuff you can rent. Maybe being for well-dressed men.
As if we didn't have anything smart to wear. The third reaction was about the background music being too loud for some people. We find that completely unfounded because the background music was extremely well chosen and subtle. Therefore, it certainly did not disturb. I was a bit surprised that there were hardly any reactions, wishes or criticism regarding content, but rather only formal things, maybe this time. Now let's get to the Microsoft part of this show. What has been going on recently in and from Redmond?
What about Microsoft and Access in the last and coming month? This time I bring you 3 topics, 2 very briefly and 1 in detail. The Access roadmap and the Dataverse connector. Files from the internet that contain macros or VBA will soon be blocked, and of course, the long story about the 2 disastrous update bugs that kept us busy from December to February. Microsoft's roadmap for Access has remained the same since December. However, I don't think that means it is correct, but that it is not kept up to date again. According to the roadmap, the Dataverse connector should be released this March. However, at the session about the connector for the Denver Access user group in January, Access Program Manager Michael Aldrich said the following: "Our hope is that we're gonna GA in the first half of this year, sooner rather than later in the first half. So I wouldn't hold my breath that this is going to work out with March, and thus all the other dates on the roadmap can be met. Let's wait and see." On a side note, I wrote an article on LinkedIn about who I've seen most excited about the Dataverse connector so far and why. You can find the link to that article in the notes below the video. A completely different gift we have to expect from Microsoft starting in April. Step by step it will be introduced for the different Office versions that macro or VBA containing files are blocked by default. This already has existed before. However, it will be changed and tightened. And it affects all kinds of downloads or mails, also zip files. I'll write you 3 links about this in the video notes, the official announcement from Microsoft and 2 articles from Daniel Pinault and from Mike Wolf about how best to deal with this as an administrator, Access developer and user. Just a quick look at Mike Wolf's blog on this. The old security warning is replaced by a new one where the user can no longer simply activate the content, but is just directed to a hard to understand informational text from Microsoft. It is still possible to unblock the file by clicking the unblock button in the file properties. But this has to be taught to the users first. Other options are described by Mike and Daniel in the linked articles. Now to the update bugs that probably some of you will have noticed. In any case, they affected countless Access installations around the world. In December, in many systems, it was no longer possible to open shared Access files in network paths. And in early February, Access files were no longer closed completely and the log file remained. This also made normal and shared use impossible. The first bug came to the machine starting at December 14th with Office security updates. Here are 2 typical error messages it caused. And here are the technical organizational details of how it showed up in the Access people's practice.
I'm here for your security. My name is Ladybug.
Shortly after this, but independent of the first, the second update bug was delivered with Microsoft Office updates starting January 26. For most, it arrived in early February and left symptoms and error messages like these here. This time we were a little forewarned by the first show-stopping bug, thereby cautious and ready to fight. Here's what it looked like.
Cameras, give it an eye of area!
Many Access developers were reminded of earlier severe update bugs. But what and when were they really? The memory is blurring over time. To remedy, here's a short list of the worst showstoppers. In between, of course, there were several smaller update bugs and regressions that had less broad impact. Many will still remember the nice message "query is corrupt," or that the identity type in linked SQL Server tables was suddenly no longer recognized, or when the decimal type led to crashes and errors. You can see in the table that 2 times Office security updates were responsible and 3 times normal Office updates. These are different things at Microsoft, and this then affects, for example, when bug fixes are distributed. Always affected by these serious bugs were the current Access versions 2016 to 365, and only partly also older versions. The last column here shows how many weeks it took to fix the bugs for all Access versions. I can't really see any progress here, but maybe you see the gap in the dates. After the first 2 showstoppers, Access Program Manager Ebo Kwanzaa showed this slide at my Access DevCon in April 2020, stating that stability was the top priority for Microsoft and they would be looking for better processes. On the timeline here, you can see that the first 3 serious update bugs took place until mid-2020. Then there was an 18-month breather with no broad impact showstoppers, just minor ones, until the 2 recent severe. Of course, there's also the long-term monster bug. This refers to the inconsistent state bug in Access backends, which has not been fixed for almost 4 years. The question is, to what circumstances do we owe this green phase? My hope for a long time was that it was the improved processes at Microsoft. But the 2 recent update bugs point more to theory number 2, which is pure randomness. Of course, customers ask fundamental questions like, why do these bugs happen? Does Microsoft generally have poor quality management, or is it more of an Access problem? Why does everything take so long? One of the problems is that Access is part of the Office suite and is treated like the entire Office concerning updates and processes. But Access, by its very nature, occupies a different, business-critical position in many companies. If only one user gets in with PowerPoint, Word or Excel, it's annoying. If that happens with Access, the company stands. Another often discussed question is which versions to use to be better protected from update bugs. Many people deliberately use old Access versions that are no longer supported and therefore don't get the damaging updates at all. This sometimes helps. Of course, it's not the most secure thing to do and often doesn't meet compliance regulations. The other strategy, which is of course recommended by Microsoft, is to always use the latest and greatest, which means the rental version Microsoft 365. That gets for the safest and fastest all the bugs, and usually the fastest all the fixes. SQL Server is often used as a backend instead of the Access files that have become increasingly unstable in recent years. This sometimes helps, but as we saw in the table before, there was also the identity showstopper that only affected SQL Server, and the decimal bug that affected it just as much. Ultimately, the showstopper frequency leads to a crisis of confidence in Access and very fundamental discussions about its usability as a business-critical tool. Finally, here's a little guide to what you should do if you suspect you've been hit by an update bug or regression. First, check with other or new databases, other machines and parameters if it isn't just an individual problem, but don't spend too much time on it. Then check out Microsoft's bug webpage and the recent posts on Daniel Pinault's site. Daniel is a Canadian Access MVP and something of a seismograph or early warning system for Access bugs. Check out forums and skim the current discussion titles there first, before you're the 50th person to ask the same thing. In the notes below this video you find a few links to Access forums. Of course there are many more, but in the ones mentioned you will always find Access MVPs who often know more when it comes to update bugs. Forum contributions from Access team members are also helpful. Forums are not only the fastest place to find bug information, but also the fastest place to get workarounds and remedies.
There has been a lot going on in the Access community this time. I will briefly introduce 2 new initiatives as well as a few interesting meetings and videos.
Let's first look at Europe in 3 zones this time: Germany, Spain and Europe as a whole. I have already described the German Access Regulars tables, Stammtische, in the first issue of Access News. Therefore, here are only the upcoming dates as far as they are known. Due to the pandemic, all of them would still take place virtually, with the particular exception of Munich. Now we are going to Spain. An interesting approach has been taken by a new user group there. Accessglobal.net is a collaboration of several Spanish Access developers that has taken on quite a bit on the website of the same name. Tutorials, videos, hands-on labs, tips and tricks articles, etc. etc. So if they can pull it all off, they will at least provide the Spanish-speaking global empire of the Habsburgs with access information properly. Suerte, tiempo y perseverancia con ello, compañeros. The next project is not global by definition, but at least pan-European. The new group Europe in the virtual accessusergroups.org. Its founder, Colin Riddington, is British. Pan-European, with a British starting point and focus, is somewhat ironic when you think of the Brexit. But he chose Alessandro Grimaldi as co-moderator, an Italian living in Germany after all. At the beginning of March, the group had its first online meeting with quite a few visitors from all parts of the world. This is a trend not only in Access User Groups.org, but in most Access user groups. Because of the many online meetings, whether voluntary or due to the pandemic, the presenters come from all over the world, and in the meantime also the participants. Even the time zones seem to be dissolving more and more. Since we are already at accessusergroups.org, here's a hint to another video for people who are interested in the beta state of the Dataverse connector. Maria Barnes, the leader of the Lunchtime group, showed the state with a few examples at the end of January. From this you can learn a bit more than from the official promotional videos from Microsoft. Of course, you can find the YouTube link to her presentation in the notes below this Access News video. Finally, once again a look at Colorado. I've never been there, but I really imagine it to be something like this. The Denver area Access user group has already had 2 talks this year that you can watch on video. In January, Nathan Halgrain, Power Platform PM at Microsoft, told why he thinks Dataverse is a great thing. And in February, Colin Riddington presented his tool for automatic form resizing. In the next meeting, on March 17th, Mike Wolf will talk about query performance.
And again, through great effort, charm and bribes, Access News has managed to get the organizer of the 2nd largest Access conference in the world for an interview.
Mr. Donnerbauer, in spring you will host the next conference for Access developers. What can you tell us about it?
The DevCon will be held virtually again at the end of April. Here is some information about it.
I've been hosting the Access DevCon since 2017. You can see the history on the website with topics, pictures, videos, etc. The first 3 years it was an in-person event with 50+ Access developers from many different countries. The offline DevCons were held in this beautiful palace in Vienna. And of course we had more opportunities such as sightseeing tours and visits to typical Viennese inns. Since the beginning of the pandemic, DevCons have only taken place virtually. This also has its advantages. First of all, more Access developers from all parts of the world can participate with less cost and effort. Last year, we offered workshops for Power BI and Power Apps for the first time. Right now, we are still offering them for people who missed them last year. Check out the DevCon website if you are interested. This year, the DevCon takes place on April 28 and 29. In early March, when this video goes online, the DevCon website will also be updated. You will be able to see most of the topics and register. Planned this time are, as always, an update session on the current state of Access, including a Dataverse connector demo, etc. A deeper look into COM as technical basis of Access, the world premiere of a new front-end distributor based on Azure, word automation, Google Maps, tips and tricks, and other topics, a good dozen in total. One focus I've been deliberately keeping lately is introducing lots of new tools provided by the Creative Access community.
I think you also have a call to our viewers.
Indeed. I'm on the hunt for presentations throughout the year. If you have an interesting technical topic to present or an innovative program or tool for Access, please email me and let's talk about it.
Well then, good luck and well soon. After all, you have a family to feed.
The best innovations and tools for Access in recent years have clearly come from the community, by individual developers or small companies. One of these innovative people is undoubtedly Thomas Pfoch from Berlin, Germany. I've had him as a guest at my conferences several times. There, for example, he presented his tree view, which gets along completely with Access on board means, and still offers more features than all ActiveX controls. It is similar with his newer map tool. He's currently working on an English version of it, which will be released soon. That was the reason for the following interview.
Hey Thomas, at the last AKs you showed us your map application that is completely done in Access. Why did you do it this way instead of the usual browser control in Google Maps?
Yeah, Carl, thank you. I had a customer request for a map application where he collects GPS positions from his drivers and wanted to display them on a map. I decided against Google because it's very complicated to manage due to the complex and ever-changing APIs. Access has native tools to display a map. You only need an image control and a method to fetch the tiles from a map server. Finally, I could avoid the outdated browser control. Instead, I have a complete control over the data and its presentation.
Sounds good. Show us something.
Yeah, let me start with a view to the form. This is my map form, and here you see one image control. In the property sheet you can see there are some events which are used to control the movement in the map and do all the things this map should do. I switch to the form view and make full size, hide the navigation pane, and this is second form which controls the map and the movement in the map, and in which I can decide which map server I will use. Currently it's Wikimedia. I switch to OpenStreetMap.de. You can see the tiles in the map are coming in one by one, but they are requested simultaneously. So there is a multi-threading in this map which accelerates the displaying of the map. Let me show some other tile servers. I would like to show you the TopoMap tile server, which has a different layout, a different naming. There is a commercial service, ArcGIS. To show these maps, you have to make a contract with them. Here you see the National Geographic card.
Do you get all the data that you show here live from the web, or is it stored on your PC?
It is live from the map, but it's buffered on the PC, so if I call the same map a second time, I don't have to pull them from the web. Mm-hmm. Should we have a look at the frontier in Ukraine? This here is the Crimea, and I think the Donbass and Luhansk are here, so I select this area and the map zooms in. So here we have the Crimea, and the frontier might be somewhere here. Yeah. There are also some providers for overlays. This is rain, which comes from ArcGIS 2. So you see the clouds and you see where the rainfall is currently.
Thomas, one of the advantages that you do all this in Access is that you can draw anything anywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, Carl, of course. Let me show you how I can draw a trail of the driver of my customer. I have prepared a table which is recording of the GPS positions. I select this table in this form, and as you can see in the combo box longitude and latitude, it automatically selects the according fields in the table which are identified by the name. And you can see also a field control tip text, and this tool recognizes these properties and sets them for each individual label I'm going to show on the map. And I draw the whole track on the map. So the map is automatically optimized to the trail. If I go onto one of these labels, you can see the control text popping up. So the driver was here at 7:30. Let me add a second set of labels, which are pictures which the driver took on his tour. And I add these labels so you can see when I go onto a picture label, I see it's a heartbeat.
So essentially the customer could bring in whatever data he has. He just has to be in your table structure and could have drawn his own maps as he likes it and his own routes, etc.
Absolutely. Okay, here a brief explanation on how a map is loaded into the form. The form consists of 64 image controls, and I add these 64 map tiles to the download queue. This is a VBA collection, and the tiles are coded in a tile class, so they are tile objects. To retrieve the tiles, I use asynchronous calls with the XML library you maybe know. For an asynchronous call, I have to periodically check if the call succeeded, and for that I need a timer event. Timer events are only supplied with forms, so I create hidden forms, and they receive the tile URL and the image control where they have to place the tile, and then they start the download. The downloaded PNG is then stored to disk, and the image control source receives that file path of the new tile. Currently I'm working on an English version of picoware maps, and I hope the documentation will be ready in a few weeks.
And now to your sales promotion, Thomas.
No, Carl, it's not a sales promotion. There is a free demo as ACTE or MDE. It's fully functional, but you don't have access to the source code, of course. If you want to have a developer license, you can buy an MDB, which is valid for 32 and 64-bit. You can integrate it into your application, and
it costs a lot of euros.
It does, but there is a discount for your visitors. If you use Access News on my website, you can buy the map or the tree view until March 31 with 30% discount.
Thank you very much for the interview, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Carl. It was a pleasure.
This was the second issue of Access News. If you have something interesting to show for Access, a special application, a tool, or an exciting community initiative, please contact me. It would also be nice to get reactions to the content of the show. What was interesting, what was less? What topics would you like to see in the next show? Or should I just keep cobbling away as I have done so far? Servus from Vienna. Well, I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here.
Dad, have you seen my guitar anywhere?
Well,